Well, I'm really excited to be here and joined by my fellow panelists. I wanted to start off by addressing what we think about in terms of innovation. As being here, we think about innovation, and often that's with a deep creative expertise. But when we talk about it in terms of agency and what that means for change, that's more about what is the work that we're doing, how are we producing the best work that we can, what are the ideas worth bringing to fruition, and what are the problems that we're looking to solve. And so, happily, I have on the panel people that I really admire and who are doing amazing work in both the agency world and on the brand side. So we have Christine Lane, who is the SVP, Executive Producer of Innovation at McCann, which is one of the oldest advertising agencies. And she's responsible for work like Fearless Girl, which is one of the most accoladed agency campaigns to date. And then we have from Mini, Esther Bahne, the VP of Strategy and Innovation, and Nate Pinsley, ADO's Global Managing Director. And together, the two of them have started ADO, which is a community space in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, that looks at bringing together different groups to spark that innovative conversations across discipline. And so that's my introduction, and we're going to just kind of like jump into it right now. We have about a half an hour. So yeah, Esther, I'd love to start with you. Could you tell us a little bit about ADO and how that came to be?
Yeah, so hi everyone. We were, well, how do I start this? I joined BMW in 2013, hired by the board to help them disrupt themselves from the inside before they were being disrupted from the outside. And over the years, I've set up a small team that wrote the strategy on autonomous driving, the future on mobility services, facilitated the merger that you may have seen now between Daimler and BMW on mobility services. But also, early on, I was asked to take a look at Mini as a brand and where it was at the time, and the feeling was it got somehow stuck in a positioning of 2001, hadn't really evolved since. And so I brought together a group of 10, including me, people to look into this from all kinds of fields, 4 people from within BMW, 5 from outside, one of them being Nate Pinsley, that I had worked with successfully previously when I ran Audi Social Innovation, and Nate was at Purpose. I'm not sure I should say agency.
No, I was in client service. I know what it's like,
I was in
guys.
client service. And we partnered and then really wanted to continue to work together, so relevancy of agency there. Yeah, we developed a strategy for a complete relaunch of the brand, saying that we should turn it from a car brand to a lifestyle brand and change what we were selling, not just how we were selling it or positioning it. And if I'm very honest, I didn't think this was going to go down with the board. I didn't really bet any money on that, continued with my other tasks. And then the entire board was let through it in a full-day workshop, and they loved it and said we should take it on. And so the next day I had a new job, setting up a team that was going to do the relaunch next to the daily business of Mini. So I moved into that conference room with a few people, and we grew it up from there. And now we are probably the biggest team within Mini by now. We have about 30 people in Munich, 17 here in New York, and a small team set up in Shanghai. And we are responsible for, by now, the entire strategy, but also all new ventures. And with that, we set out, I don't know whether you guys know, but we now do automobiles. We also do apartments, mini living, co-living. We have a smaller venture called Mini Fashion that's still budding. We invest in startups, and we have a design center here in Brooklyn that Nate runs. And that is scaling now. And that was the first venture we set out because we wanted to have a place where we were really understanding what was happening in our target group by giving them something that they found relevant and that would bring them back on a daily basis.
I think that's what's really interesting about the ADO space, right? Is innovation as an exercise in like what are the problems like we're wanting to solve, and so this idea that the future of mobility isn't about cars. So I'd love for both of you to talk about what were the reasonings behind how you structured ADO and sort of some of the different parties you have coming in through that space.
Sure. I mean, I think one of the things that attracts people to ADO, we get thousands of visitors a week to come to our events and just work there and take up workspace, is that it feels like everyone there is sort of on a journey, is grappling with some uncertainty about the world. We're all facing a lot of uncertainty now, and wants to be immersed in an environment where there's conversation about what can design and technology and innovators do about these big questions. And I think the honesty that we brought to that as a brand is that we're on that journey too, that we are navigating a new world. The changes in mobility are profound in terms of who the players are and how money is to be made in the future. And we sort of set off on a very different way than most brands do by saying, hey, we want to build a space where we're talking about these big questions. We don't want to pose those questions in the way brands have done in the past by hiring consultants and talking about these questions in the ivory tower. We want to bring it to the public, to the grassroots. Because we feel that everyone has a mutual benefit in having this conversation. We don't have to be the only ones who are gaining by having this conversation, these answers. Let's have a big table where we're all peers and we're all engaging in this. And that's, I think, what has been most successful about it, is that it is a model where there's mutual exchange and mutual benefit, not seeming one-sided.
Yeah, I love that idea of mutual benefit too. Some of the work, or one of the most prominent pieces that has come to date that really moved me was Fearless Girl, and I'd love for you to talk about how that idea came about and what do you think, or how are you defining agency innovation?
Yeah, so Fearless Girl came about because we had a brand that we were working with, and they had a brand value that wasn't very well known in the market and the industry. And so we needed to share that in order to connect the brand with their consumers. So what we ended up doing was identifying that brand value, identifying the product. So the value was diversification, specifically on boards, and the product was a fund that they had already started, which invested in companies that had more diverse boards. And then we combined that very specifically with a social movement that was happening at the time, which was the Me Too and the women's movement and the Women's March. And together, when we combined those things and gave them equal value, we were able to do what we do best and craft a story around that. And that story was resulted in a bronze statue of a little girl staring down the Wall Street charging bull. But I think very much so it was about the combination of something that was very important to the world at the moment and something that was very important to a brand, and putting those on equal footing.
Yeah, it's really inspiring work. It's one of the reasons too why I'm actually fairly new to McCann, and I joined the innovation team, which is a small team within a very large operating organization. And I think that there's something really nice about that nimbleness, having kind of disruptive ideas happening from the inside, and then also the impact that can have when you have a long-term view of that. And I know that we've talked about that a lot, and so I'd love to hear more of your thoughts on what does that mean to disrupt from the inside, especially at Mini.
Oh, okay. Car industry. It's a tanker, obviously. It's very conservative. It has good reasons to stick to its old guns because it's still very profitable. Everything you launch is measured by the profit that they make with a new car project, which is hard on everything that you want to launch. And so it's difficult, but we were fortunate enough to report directly to the board, and I think that literally is the only way to do it. We did the same thing when we worked together at Audi and worked directly for the board there. and just get the ear, because I feel there is a lot of people that will join what you start on a lower working level, and top management will, but everybody in the middle will not. Yeah.
So how do you think you're galvanizing that? I mean, it seems like such a daunting task, right? I mean, we talk about agency as being things that are able to activate something or to create something that you feel should be in the world. How do you think you were able to kind of crystallize that sense of purpose and galvanize people within BMW and Mini to make that?
I mean, I think one of the things that has been a hallmark of our work is trying to get everyone inside the company, no matter if you're in, some dark division of finance that barely sees daylight, or the people who get to do the cool stuff, your clients. It's about helping them understand that there are other measures of success besides profitability, obviously. That's not such a new idea now, but I think sustainability as a measure, social impact as a measure, those are kind of getting out there in terms of the ideas within a company, but relevance as a measure of your success and a measure of impact. I think that's a really important idea that is still not well understood in the company. Like, what does it mean to be a culturally relevant company, not just for the products you create in a very narrow sense, short term, but long term? How are you going to enjoy a social contract where people really want you to be around as a company for a long term? And that's how we measure our success.
Yeah, I pulled this quote earlier, and I wanted to, because I felt like it was really poignant for this time. Early last year, the New York Times published a piece on Larry Fink, the founder and CEO of BlackRock. And he wrote, "To prosper over time, every company must not deliver financial performance, but also show how it makes a positive contribution to society. In other words, it's crucial for long-term success to have purpose." And he followed this year with a new missive, which was, "Businesses," he wrote, "cannot merely have purpose, they must be leaders in a divided world." So, where do you think Mini stands as a leader? And where do you want to lead people towards?
Well, I mean, so maybe we can both answer it, because I enjoy a mandate for ADO for us to, literally we're supposed to be thought leaders within the design and innovation space, and carry with us both this little community in Brooklyn, but also Mini as a brand, as thought leaders. And we get to tackle a wide range of issues. I mean, our last year of research has been about drinking water, that crisis and the role that design and innovation is playing, a census of sort of what are the newest and most interesting interventions that are made there. And we doubled down on that topic because it has been around for 2 decades. A lot of people talk about drinking water, and we felt that there's a importance to that topic that we as a big company can stand on a podium and say, hey, look, we know you've heard about drinking water, and we know it feels like one of those intractable long-term things, but there are new solutions being created, and we wanted to inspire the design community and innovators around the world to say, hey, keep working at this, keep doing this. And one of our new topics for the year ahead is immigration and national borders, and how design can play a role in ameliorating some of those issues. And so, we're not afraid to tackle those things, and that conversation, that kind of #real talk with people is what they crave from a big company. I think so many companies are afraid to go anywhere near that, but much to their detriment.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you feel about the agency, the ad world and agencies?
Well, let me say this. When you ask, I think where we are a leader is the way we collaborate and how we work. And I think our colleagues and everybody that we know in the corporate world that gets to know how we work wants to learn how we do that, because we are small. And we are way smaller than we seem. We have way less people than you would assume. We have way less budget than anyone in the car industry has, other than our friends at Rolls-Royce. And we make it go further. And a way that we do that is that we literally collaborate on building our brand. And we didn't have, the story of how we actually changed our CI is scary, but I mean, we had our designer shoot the car from the window in the design center, and then we rendered it ourselves, and then we hung it out. This is actually how we started. But then we went out into the world with a non-finished brand and finished it in a collaborative process, Coram Publicum. And everything we had to develop in terms of product development, brand development, we did as a communication exercise and made that the story. And that has been extremely successful for us. And all of the pieces that we tried are now core pillars of the brand. And in that, I think agencies were instrumental in that our teams are so small. I mean, we're now building Mini Living at an insane pace for us. We're building like massive real estate developments in Shanghai. There's one going up in America, one in Europe, and they're supposed to scale fast. And we have 2 people internally that run this. One is an architect and one is a business developer, and they're doing this. They're literally doing this by the entire architectural drawings are actually from our architect. And they collaborate. We can't afford to give it out entirely and outsource it. But we find experts, we find individuals with find partners. And agency partners have been essential in this, but they had to come and be part of the team. And we had to find partners that wanted to be with us on the journey and be flexible enough to grow with us as we grew, and to change the roles and to help us find what we needed to get into the next phase and eventually be okay and envisioning that they would be obsolete. That has, we've tried, we've had a few agency partnerships that didn't work so well. We had some that worked extremely well, and the ones that worked extremely well were those that saw themselves as partners for part of the way and really wanted to be part of the team.
Yeah, I think collaboration is really important when it comes to agency. And speaking of small teams, I mean, Christine heads a team of 4 across an agency with like 30,000 employees. So I'd love to hear from you too, more about like, where do you see collaborations going in the future, and like what your vision for the innovation team at McCann is?
Yeah, so very, very small. We're probably about 10% of the entire production department, so it's quite small. But where I think we're going is that right now we're an innovation team because we're predominantly a broadcast agency, and so anything that is non-traditional or outside of broadcast will go through this team. That exists right now. I think somebody was talking earlier about the novelty in advertising agencies, and non-traditional is still very novel. But that's going to go away in the next couple of years, and I imagine production departments will be have much more of an equal mix between digital, experiential, emerging technology, and broadcast production. And then to the point that you were making about partnerships and collaboration, on the tech side of production, we often have conversations about, should we have creative technologists in-house? Should we have programmers and coders in-house? And for certain use cases, that might make sense. But generally speaking, our point of view is that we want to partner with the right collaborator at that right moment in time. And so it's actually in our benefit and to our clients' benefit if we can be aware of the potential partners that are out there, know what they're doing and what they're working on, and how that might dovetail with one of the brands and one of the creative concepts that we currently have at the agency, so that we can bring them together.
So it's kind of like, as we wrap up, I want to give a little bit of time for questions, but when we think about agency and redefining or reclaiming that definition, I think we often forget about the fact that is a characteristic that is binary. If you look at in psychology, when you use the term agency, that's always coupled with communion. So it's like your ability to separate from yourself, to have a sense of agency and individuality, essentially get ahead coupled with your ability to work with others and your ability to understand where your place is within a larger system. And what I see a lot more of, and what I hope to see more of, being at McCann as well, is initiatives like this, where we're trying to build community, we're trying to find the right collaborators. We can't all be innovators in an expertise. It's like let people be their experts. And how do we come together? And so I'd love to hear, any final thoughts you have on like community building, or like what you've learned in building community.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that strikes me just as a visual metaphor, if you will, is one of the things that a leader within our organization says is this idea of the fast and slow speeds that an organization has to operate at these days when you're navigating disruptive forces and just change happening at an incredible pace, that large companies are not organized to move quickly. And this is nothing new, but just think of this like slow ship turning in a harbor, and that's kind of our context, where we come from. But in order to survive and thrive, you have to be able to operate like this little speedboat, and I think that's where an agency comes in. The agency is able to help you build that speedboat, but it can't be the speedboat. I think that's really the thing that I'd like to impress, is that it's about incubating the competency within the company, helping them learn to move at that speed, not saying, oh great, yeah, we'll take care of it for you, because then what you get out of it is short-termist, it's inauthentic, and people within society will be able to see that. You have a very shrewd consumer base, especially when you're talking about things like social impact and things like cultural relevance. You have an informed group of people in the populace who are going to tear you apart if you don't have the commitment to back it up.
Yeah, plus I think that the whole initiative will only survive if you teach people internally. I mean, if your clients don't smarten up with you, then it's not going to be a long-term thing. And we see that we're smartening up all our colleagues to go with us. Otherwise, our initiatives won't go any further. And as soon as one of us is on sabbatical, like we just know, it would fall apart if they hadn't caught up by then.
I think it's a good analogy, because I think you're exactly right, and that as much as an agency can build that smaller speedboat, we can't direct it. That direction has to come from the brand. And so it is very much a partnership the two have to work together on. And I would say, just from an agency perspective, the more and more that I see agencies and brands working to focus on earning credibility with the public and with the press versus selling, the more success I've seen in the work. So it's more about how can I have a conversation with you, because I want to participate in that conversation with you because it's meaningful to me, than impressing people upon with their own thoughts.
That's great. Well, I want to give a couple minutes for any questions to ask the panel regarding innovation, how Minnie made a space in Greenpoint for all the hipsters out there. Any questions?
Hi, I don't have a question. I just want to say, the people around here, we've all been checking out your site, so I know you didn't bring any visuals to show, but I just would encourage everyone to go look at the site, because it's really interesting just to see the breadth of what you offer in this space, from art exhibits to the restaurant, and just the way you're thinking of it as a collaborative way for creative people to come together. So I would just encourage everyone to do that.
Thank you. She's not a plant, I promise.
I have a question. I remember this pretty well, because I was kind of involved peripherally a bit on this. You guys faced a lot of negative PR at the very beginning, and you had to kind of course correct, and you've done an amazing job. Can you tell us a little bit about how you've embedded yourself in the community and taken what was a bit of a bad situation and made it pretty good?
Yeah. I mean, I think if you look at, so the reference is that we entered Brooklyn a little bit naively thinking that it could be a secret while we figured out how we were going to talk about the project and develop it. And then about a year before our plan started communication, it hit the airwaves that we had signed a lease. And the thing that we didn't learn is that you need to have from the moment you even start investigating something like this, you have to have an understanding of how you're going to communicate it to everyone. And we didn't have that ready. So egg on our face. I think what we then learned, though, is to not immediately turn around and make this a huge public thing and get release a bunch of press releases and try to talk about this in the court of public opinion. What we did is look at the community. So we went into Community Board 1 and meeting the people who are grandparents and in the Polish community there and people who are in the design community in Brooklyn, and spent that year allowing the conversation to happen publicly, knowing that we weren't going to be able to win there, and build up a really broad-based group of people who wanted us to come into the community because we were able to tell the story on a face-to-face basis, so that by the time we opened, we had this groundswell of people who were really psyched to be part of the space. And we hosted pizza events for the local community, and we're on every Saturday morning filled with strollers because word got out that we're a very stroller-friendly space. So if I had to narrow it down, strollers, that's your number one strategy.
Anyone else in the middle over here?
Hi. Earlier at CES this year, Mark Pritchard talked about the days of advertising as we know it are numbered. We've made messages for many, many years, and we need a new form, an evolved form of advertising. So from your perspective with your agency partners, what is that new definition? What do we need to make?
Interestingly, my boss, who's the board member of BMW, responsible for Mini, Rolls-Royce, mobility service, etc., came in and said, from 2020 on, I'm not going to give you any money for classical marketing anymore. What are you going to do with it? Because I don't think that's the right way to spend it. It's not, it's not a credible way of having people buy into your brand. And we coined the phrase of substance marketing, saying that we have to build something that people find so relevant, it spreads anyway. And I think ADO was our way of starting to do that, Mini Living, having buildings that we conceive of as public buildings. So at least a third of all our spaces are meant to be publicly accessible, including the rooftop terraces, which is a huge fight with the real estate developers. Because we want people to come and have an experience of the brand as something that's really relevant to them. And we, as Nate said, that's what we put on top of every presentation. It says, have people say if they weren't there, I would miss them. If that works, it should work. My counterpart, Mark, who works very closely with me, who runs the marketing department and spends the marketing money behind our initiatives, always says, and I still have to put money behind it, so people see it, thank you very much. And then we go in and get him some budget too. But I think there is a rethinking around, storytelling in a less wordy way, maybe.
And I would add that it becomes more of a partnership again, where you're creating something, but then you're relying on word of mouth or press in order to be able to share that story versus you creating your own messaging that people then have to absorb. So it's changing the how, and then allowing the individuals and the public to do your work for you in some way.
Which, by the way, was the idea when we didn't say what we were going to do in Brooklyn. Yeah. And wanted to be super secret about it and have people wander in and not even know that it was Mini. And then everybody wrote they're opening a car dealership. And we were like, shit. But, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining, and thank you for having us. Available for autographs after.